We're going to be talking all about self-comparison. Self-comparison is something that naturally happens, particularly if you're working around other creative stylists, or even if you're working alone. It can happen on that digital platform when you're comparing your result to the result you've just seen online, or when you talk to peers and you're thinking about all the successes they have and seeing all the successes that other people in the industry have. Self-comparison is sometimes not something that happens consciously, it happens subconsciously. But in that subconscious thought, it can lead to a lot of negative self-talk or feeling like we aren't good enough. Now, when we're feeling self-comparison, some of the thoughts we might have are things like, there are more capable artists than me, or they charge more than I do, or they're an expert and I'm not, or they're busier than me. All these kind of thoughts lead us into that very dangerous road of self-comparison. Now, sometimes they can just be niggling feelings and we can overcome them quite quickly. But what we don't know is that the more we think this subconsciously, the more we actually create a foundation of the thoughts that we have of ourselves. Now, what we're going to look at is starting to turn that self-comparison into inspiration. To do that, I've come up with my 3 A's of comparison. These 3 A's are assess, accept, and then admire. So I'm going to talk you through these 3 A's as each a step of how to overcome self-comparison and turn it into a positive. Because we want self-love, of course. Now, the first A is assess. Now, I want you to, when you feel that self-comparison or you feel any of those negative self-talk frames of mind happening, or you compare some work you've done, or however you find yourself comparing yourself to somebody else, as soon as you notice that happening, I want you to assess the vulnerability. So what does this involve? First of all, think about when comparison is showing up for you. So whether this is you prepping for when you next feel self-comparison or thinking of a past situation where you felt the comparison, think about what it is that's causing the self-comparison to come up. Is it the fact that you think somebody is doing better in their career than you are? Is it the fact that somebody is creatively better than you are or you think they are? Is it the fact that there's a certain skill that you can't master and other people have? Think about for a second where that comparison is showing up for you. I want you to figure out what you're making that mean for you. What does it mean to you when you compare yourself to somebody else? Are you making that mean that you will never get to the point you want to get to? Are you making that mean that you will never be able to offer a certain service? What is it that you're making that mean for you, and why? Why are you feeling that way? What I want you to start doing is be grateful for the fact that you can actually assess that vulnerability in yourself. Again, this is not something that happens overnight. It will take you some time to start being aware of this mindset work. But when you start to compare yourself, I want you to think, okay, I'm feeling vulnerable about something, because that's all it is it's feeling vulnerable. Be grateful for the fact that you have noticed that vulnerability, assess why that has come up, and then move on to the next step. The next step is accepting that vulnerability. So send yourself self-love. Once you've assessed that you feel that vulnerability, I want you to send yourself some love, because it's normal, it's natural. We all feel it. It's okay to feel it. I want you to reassure yourself it's only natural to feel that, and I want you to remember that in feeling fear, it's our brain's natural way of protecting us. So don't beat yourself up for being human is essentially what I'm saying. I'm saying accept that it's natural to feel that way. And then I want you to address the feeling and solve it by moving on to the next step. Admiring. So we've done assess, we've done accept, and now we're admiring, the 3rd A of comparison. I want you to start admiring that comparison. So instead of comparing yourself to somebody else, think of what inspiration you can take from that other person. What can you take from that in order to stop comparing yourself to it? What can you be inspired by instead? Think of what that thing that you're comparing yourself to, think of that thing as a catalogue for what's possible for you. Instead of seeing all these things as things you can't achieve or things that you can't have or never will have, think of it as you're flicking through the life catalogue. So you're flicking through what's actually possible for you, what life has to offer for you. So instead of comparing yourself to somebody, think of it as that's something I can achieve, that's in my catalogue of life. And then think, what can you do better? There's this idea that when we take inspiration from somebody or when we're comparing ourselves to somebody else, especially in the industry, it's this idea that they're still going to be better than us. Even if we do the same thing as them, they're going to do better. But what can you do better? What can you do by taking that same thing that you want to achieve that you just compared yourself against, take inspiration from it, and then do your own version of it? You could possibly do better than what you've just taken inspiration from. That is a possibility. So, the 3 A's of comparison that I want you to apply when you feel this feeling. I want you to assess the vulnerability, accept the vulnerability, and then admire the comparison.